Hi, I'm Bob Dixon. Welcome to the Leader's Edge Hot Takes edition of the Five Eagles Insight Podcast. For over 3 decades, I served in the military as an engineer and as a strategist, and I learned a few things about leadership. We know that it goes beyond theory. It's about real-world application. So in this series, sponsored by Five Eagles Leadership, we feature industry leaders and share their leadership journeys with you. My mission's simple. It's to help you become the best leader you can be. Now, if that sounds like something you're interested in, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. If you'd like to be considered as a guest in upcoming episodes, please go to 5eaglesleadership.com/interview and apply today. Now, let's get started.
Welcome back to the Leader's Edge podcast. I'm Marisa McClure, and joining me today is Micah Green from Austin, Texas. Micah is the founder and CEO of Talos. Welcome, Micah.
Thanks so much for having me, Marisa.
All right, great. We're going to dive right into some questions because I'm really excited to hear about your business and about your leadership journey. So, to get us started, give us a 90-second or so overview of your business and why you got into it.
For sure. So my background was really in hospitality management, as we were just talking about. I went to Cornell, to the hotel school, which really business school, but a hospitality focus, and loved that, loved the industry. Growing up, I had actually been into robotics and built kits and simple robots since I was 5 years old. But then won some international competitions as I kind of got older, and really learned that robotics is the next wave. Just like personal computing, just like the internet, robotics was for the 2020s, as the director of that program said. So as part of that, I knew I wanted to go down that path to some extent, but also realized I was more destined to be on the business side of things, which brought me to Cornell and into that hospitality sphere. So that's a little context. And then I actually worked as a housekeeper on campus at the Statler Hotel. And that was the aha moment I had, was really when I was working, cleaning hotel rooms, very, very difficult job. And then learning about the labor crisis in the industry. And everyone would say this is not a labor shortage, this is a labor crisis. And it's very difficult to attract and retain staff in the industry, especially in housekeeping. So that was the moment where I realized there's got to be a better way. There's got to be this opportunity, and robots made perfect sense based on those challenges. So really that's where the idea was born. And Talos, we're a robotics company, AI company that's developing solutions for commercial real estate, as well as data that we're able to collect through those robots and bring back to the operators. And our first product is Rosie, inspired by the Jetsons, and really focusing on commercial floor care. So vacuuming of hotel guest rooms, corridors, meeting rooms. Our robots are also deployed in multifamily, senior living, office space, airports, cruise ships. So very versatile in terms of the product. And we've scaled up quite considerably over the past couple of years, and now in about 12 countries, and working with some of the top brands in those industries.
That all sounds great. I love that you shared where the name Rosie came from, because I was curious about that, and I love that it was from the Jetsons.
Yep.
And I think it's great that you were able to sort of combine two of your interests, right? So you were interested in robotics growing up, and then became interested in business and in the hospitality industry, and found a way to kind of bring the two together. So that's amazing.
Totally. And I think connecting the dots is a really interesting way to innovate and to be able to bring kind of new ideas. And with hospitality, I felt that pain firsthand. So I think that was definitely a lesson learned too, of literally cleaning hotel rooms and feeling that pain. It was super clear to me, and was able to connect those dots in a pretty unique way.
Yeah, it's great that you were able to kind of call on that lived experience to come up with an idea to help others dealing with the same challenges you were dealing with. So that's great. Yeah, great. Okay, so next question. What is the biggest problem that you see in your industry, and how are you working to solve that for yourself, for your clients, or for your referral partners?
Yeah, for sure. So I think in the industry as a whole, and I think there's kind of two pieces. There's the robotics industry we're in and AI. There's also the actual hospitality industry and commercial real estate industry. So really, not to beat a dead horse, but the labor side for hospitality and commercial real estate is the number one problem in the industry. Costs have gone way up. It's extremely hard to hire because honestly, a lot of people don't want to do this job anymore. The average age for a housekeeper too is 60 years old, 60. So it's an aging demographic, and they're starting to retire or go back to potentially a country where they grew up and be back with family, or even working at Amazon distribution centers where they might have really good perks or higher pay. So there's this almost like this exodus in the industry, and it's made it extremely difficult for operators to run the business consistently, but also revenue is not increasing at the same rate as those costs are. So the business is really getting difficult to run and difficult to run profitably and sustainably. And then in the robotics and AI side, I'd actually say it's interesting to kind of reflect, internally and think about this industry. It's also a newer, and it's definitely a booming industry, but there's also limited talent that's extremely strong and that has that deep AI and robotics experience. I'd say that's shifting for sure. But one of my biggest lessons learned over the years is having the right people makes all the difference. And we're really not just looking for A players, but A plus players. And I've learned a lot about what that means and how to vet that. So.
Yeah, it's really a rapidly developing area, right? AI, robotics, but I like that it still comes down to having the right people, right? So that's great that you recognize that and you're able to find those right people to help you with your work. So that's great. So who is your ideal client, and what are the major outcomes they can expect from working with you?
For sure. So given the hospitality background, that's where we started, and I'd say that's our bread and butter. We've now expanded into those other verticals I mentioned, like multifamily and senior living and even airports now, but still hospitality. So hotels, resorts, casinos, that, the kind of core of what we know as hospitality is really our ideal client. And we're mainly working with the management or ownership groups that actually operate or own the properties. We've worked with the brands to some extent, but there's a lot of franchisees and groups that actually have these bigger branded hotels, but they're the ones actually running the operation for the properties day to day. So I typically work with a VP of operations, an SVP of ops, EVP of ops, COO, like more on the operations side, of course, given what we're doing. And really the problem statement goes back to the labor side. But what I'd say we are solving in the value prop is there's ROI. So in terms of being able to deploy the robots, there's, you can save a significant amount of time. What we're finding though is it's not just saving the time, it's actually reallocating that time. So what can you have those team members be doing that they weren't able to do before because they were vacuuming and doing certain things that now the robots can take on. So for every hour the robot's running, you're saving about 55 plus minutes because you still have some human interaction there and they're deploying the robots, but you're saving a big portion of that time. Now what can you do with it? And there's a whole list of things, whether it's deeper cleaning, more interaction with guests, being able to do certain projects or resolve certain issues in the property sooner than had you had to wait. And there's a whole kind of domino effect that comes with that, both in terms of cost savings, but also in terms of better experience for guests, better experience in terms of cleanliness, as an example, because the robot is cleaning every square foot, which is, I'd say, pretty different than most humans who typically spot clean. And then on the other side of that too, there's just this higher degree of touch that they can do in the other work that they're doing in that same period of time. So that's like the core value, I'd say, and we've seen big increases in guest satisfaction scores. We've seen really happy users, and by that I mean people who work in the property saying, yes, I don't need to do this anymore, and I can focus on these other things that I prefer. And I think there's the domino effects that can come from that we're starting to see in terms of the retention and in terms of just elevating that experience all around for both staff and guests.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you're kind of keeping that employment footprint the same, but enabling these different businesses to do more with their employees and do more with their time, because something that takes up a lot of time. I mean, think about the square footage involved in cleaning some of these, businesses that you're talking about. It's a lot, and it takes a lot of time, and it's something that can be done more easily. So I like that you're, able to provide that for these different companies. That's great.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because, day to day as a normal kind of consumer or guest at a hotel, like you don't think about the behind the scenes as much or how much that entails. And there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and a lot of work. It's hard work. Whenever I walk in a property, I kind of look at the floors pretty quickly. I
Sure.
can see how consistently are they cleaning and also how much space there is. And of course, that can scale, right? So even small properties can get value from it. But as that property gets bigger, that's more time, that's more hours. So I very much have this kind of lens when I walk into a new building, whether it's a hotel or office or whatever, and I'm like, they could use some robots.
I love that. I love that. So what is it that makes you unique, or your business unique, in how you help your clients achieve those outcomes?
For sure. So I think there's a few things that come to mind just off the bat. I like to say we're like the Waymo for indoor. So Waymo, the self-driving cars. And the reason I say that is because similar technology and approach, and we're basically building mini self-driving cars. They also have been doing it a while. They've learned a lot. They've iterated. They have a ton of data in the field, which has improved their algorithms, just like we have. And I'd say that software navigation stack, the efficiency of the robots, the quality of the clean the robots do, the ease of use, you don't even need to map out a space. You just press play, walk away. All of that took years to develop, and a lot of edge cases and a lot of lessons learned through that. So I'd say we're years ahead, just like Waymo is, in terms of the self-driving software. On the other side of that too, there's like kind of less product and less technical. The service side, I think there's a lot of robotics companies out there in our space or in other spaces that are, here's a robot, good luck, moving on. We are serving the service industry. We talk about this a lot as a team too. We need to provide the highest level of service, and that is definitely a differentiator. And what that means in practice is we need to be able to not just train and set them up for success, but hold their hand and work alongside them throughout the adoption period, which we kind of consider 2 to 4 weeks, and beyond. And we're there. We actually have analytics to see problems before they happen in the robots so that the users don't have to experience that. So our goal is that most of the time, if not all the time, we're seeing issues before a user experiences it. And we can mitigate that. We can solve it on the robot. We can work with the users on site to swap parts out or whatever it might be. And that to me is phenomenal service. And I kind of use the analogy in like a restaurant. When I sit down, I want water. And maybe some people at the table don't want water, but I always find it kind of fascinating when somebody comes over and like, would you like some water? It's like, yeah, you shouldn't need to ask. So that's idea of service, of like getting you what you need before you know you need it, and before you need to ask for it also, I think is really a key part. So we lean into that quite a lot, and I'd say that we're not the best, but really the only ones that are doing this in terms of that really close integration piece, because it's not just a product, it's also the service behind it.
Yeah. And I love the idea of having that high level of service be kind of one of your core values, because I think you're right that is something that can be lost sometimes, with people focusing on different things and forgetting that it may seem like a little thing, but it makes all the difference in your interactions with your clients. Yeah.
Totally.
Great. So where do you see your industry going in the next 5 to 10 years, and how are you staying on top of that?
Yeah. So again, interesting because there's like the robotics AI side and then the hospitality side. I think, of course, AI is the hot thing, right? In terms of what people are talking about, what's being talked about in every conference and industry, and for good reason, because it's shaking things up. I mean, I use it day to day and for a lot of different things, and it's changed how I operate in my role specifically. So I think the AI development is moving very quickly. The LLMs are evolving very, very quickly and starting to get to the reasoning and the kind of later stage development. And I think a lot of that can be and is already by our team leveraged in our coding and being able to review coding or simplify it, in our support and being able to like look at the key problems or data points so that our team doesn't have to stream through it as much. So I'd say there's a lot of value both in terms of the robot performance and how we operate as a business, that comes from the AI. And over the next 5-10 years, like you were asking specifically, that's just going to kind of multiply, and do things honestly that we didn't even think were possible, in that side of things. I think the robotic side too is interesting because the components, the LiDAR sensors, like the sensors and the compute, like the actual computation and the intelligence or the potential intelligence you can deploy on a robot is also evolving really, really quickly. And that means that costs are coming down. So now you can do more with less, basically, or with spending less, which then we can deliver that to the end user and the end customer. So there's a lot more intelligence we can add to the robot, and there's a lot more capabilities and functionality, and reliability that comes through that. And that is something that has been really cool to watch in just even the past 5 years, how that's evolved too. I think in the hospitality and commercial real estate side, like it's not far out. Like this is happening today. We're one example. We're leading that charge in bringing robots into the service industry. And we're going to start to see, as part of our vision, an ecosystem of robots where you have multiple robots working together. Eventually we'll have humanoids for certain use cases, but I really believe that you're going to have this ecosystem where there's multiple robots doing specific use cases, but they can talk to each other, they can deploy each other, they can work together. And we've built like the foundation for that with our current product, and we'll start to introduce future products and partner with other companies to bring that to fruition at a different scale. So I'm excited for the day you walk into an airport or an office or a hotel, and you don't just see Rosie, but you see a whole a suite of robots that are deploying each other and working together. And it's just kind of say to the team too, it's kind of invisible. It's like it's happening behind the scenes. You don't really need to think about it, and it's just becoming that standard that it's running itself basically.
So Rosie's going to get some friends down the road.
Exactly. Yep.
That's awesome. Okay, so this question is a little bit more kind of about your journey, your leadership journey, your professional journey. What would you say was your biggest failure or challenge thus far in your life, and how has that helped shape the way that you do business?
Yeah, it's a good question. That's definitely
It's a little harder.
it takes a little longer because there's also been so many failures or mistakes that I've made over the past, since I started the company. And that's part of the journey, right? So, I think a couple things come to mind for sure. One big one, just going back to the product side, is like this mentality that the product should sell itself. It should be able to do what we say it's going to do. And for mobile robotics, it's really hard to get something to do consistently, and being able to do that in a changing environment with a lot of people around and things like that. So I think we definitely focused on product and R&D initially, but I think I had made some mistakes of the wrong people on the team in terms of who can develop that and who can commercialize it, not just get to 1 or 3, but get to 1,000. And I think that was a big lesson learned of those are totally different skill sets. In terms of the people, and then also setting super clear requirements of what do we need this to do. And it sounds simple, but making sure that we all have the same North Star as a team, engineering, sales, whoever it is on that team. I think we definitely could have done a better job crystallizing that, and then also having the right team members to execute on that. So I'd say that's a big one. And then just another that I think I shared with a lot of fellow entrepreneurs is the fundraise struggle. I think I've done very well at that over the years, and we've been able to get support from a lot of great brands and VCs, but it's hard. And I think I've refined my approach and created a much more structured approach in that. But in the past, it was a little more ad hoc, and it was newer to me. And I think targeting the right people there as well, and making sure we had the right story and the right system kind of process around fundraising, definitely have refined that over the years too.
Yeah, it sounds like you've done a lot of sort of on-the-job training and development for yourself, like learning as you go. And I think that's pretty standard when you start at such a young age and
Yeah.
have these, new ideas, and, you're kind of building the plane while you fly it, right? That's one of the
Yeah,
terms that I like
exactly.
to use there. But
Yeah.
you also touched on a couple, I think, really key principles to keep in mind as a leader, right? Finding the right team,
Yeah.
cultivating that team, developing those personnel to fit into the organization and the vision that you're trying to achieve. And then you also talked about setting clear expectations. And that's something
Yeah.
that seems like a simple concept, but it's a little bit more challenging than that. Because you might think that what's in your head and what's your vision should be clear to everyone, but sometimes it's not. And so finding the way to communicate that effectively to your people and kind of motivate them to move in the direction you need them to go to get to some of those expectations, that is definitely a skill, and it sounds like you've been developing that skill, so that's great.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think you nailed it with both the expectations piece and then also I think for a while I took for granted, like, why aren't people getting this? Or like, this is so obvious to me, but articulating it, putting it in display, reminding people, continuously going back, and as CEO, right, I'm chief visionary, I need to set that, but I also don't just set it, I need to kind of remember or remind people of what
Yeah.
that is and why we're doing this, and tying things
Yes.
back and challenging people if we're doing something or thinking about doing something that doesn't tie to that. So I think that constant, even to the point where
Yeah.
it might get annoying for people, but that's really clear. And then even, a lot of the conflict that can happen internally or externally tends to happen with communication.
Yeah.
And really the root of it I've seen, whether it's conflict between me and my wife or me and, someone on the team or me and a customer, whatever it might be, it's, hey, let's take a step back and just make sure we manage these expectations. Okay, this is what I'm saying. What are your expectations? How do we bring that together? And I think just like simplifying down to that tends to also help, not just setting things up for success, but resolving that conflict or resolving that. Because it's like, hey, we're humans at the end of the day. We're not
Of course.
perfect. Let's like
Yeah.
realign on what we're talking about here and make sure we're saying the same thing. And listening, I think, is an important part of that too. The big skill that
Yes.
been focused on of like hearing what is said and truly hearing it, but also hearing to what's unsaid and being able to kind of go through that. So,
Yeah, I like to say listening to understand, not just listening to respond, right? So,
yep.
the whole array of interpersonal skills, some of them are verbal skills, some of them are nonverbal skills, but you really need to
Yep.
have the whole package to be able to communicate effectively. And I like, I always think about, different organizations that have a vision and a mission statement, and they post it on their website, and maybe they have it
Yeah.
on the wall when you walk in, but then they kind of lose sight of that. And like you said, like, it's good to always be kind of tying it back. So let's reground ourselves in that mission and vision statement, and let's, find these different intervals, making sure that we're not losing sight of,
Yeah.
who we are, who we aspire to be, because just creating the mission and the vision is the easy part. It's living it, and continuing to strive to achieve it, right? Yeah. So.
For sure. And we've been able, so like an example, so there's the mission, the core purpose. So we come back to that every all hands, but we also come back to our core values every single all hands. And we actually have a shout out section because that's part of the culture we want to cultivate, is like positive reinforcement and not just fluff, but like here are tangible things that this person did, and creating this culture of like, there's enough negatives and enough problems and enough, issues that can come up, that let's make sure we're reminding ourselves of the positives and shouting people out, which feels good
Yes.
for them and for the person doing it, but also tying that into the core values. And I think that's a way that we've been able to more naturally reinforce it. I mean, it is literally up on a slide every all hands, but I think it's a way that people really connect and can tie back to that. And it is that consistent thing. So that's been like a very
Yeah.
tangible thing we've implemented, and yeah, it's been a game
Yeah,
changer.
I love that recognition and acknowledgement for people's good work. And also, it's easy to get kind of mired in the negative stuff. I was the commanding officer of a military prison for 3 years,
Wow.
and it was really easy to only focus on the negative outcomes and the
Yeah.
negative experiences that were happening day to day. And so I told my staff, like, anytime anyone has a success story, even if it's something really small, like, bring it to me. Let's share it. Let's, highlight it so that it kind of just invigorates the staff, motivates folks, and reminds you that, like, we're here to work toward these positive outcomes, and they are happening. They're just not as apparent, right, day to day. So that's a great practice, and I love that you do that. So awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is the next area of growth for you or for your business?
Next area for growth. I think the big thing that we're thinking about, I mean, we're very revenue focused and growing the revenue and scaling, like we're a true business now, and a few years ago it was more kind of the R&D focus. So I think we're seeing growing pains, right, as hitting new tiers of revenue and new growth and new number of accounts and customers and team members. So I think the big thing is, how do we kind of scale it? How do we also do that in a way that's efficient for the team we have and stay lean? So we don't necessarily need to hire, hundreds and hundreds of people to scale with that necessarily. I mean, of course, I want to build a phenomenal team, but I know a lot of companies, or there's kind of that mentality of just like, let's get as many people as we can. Mm-hmm. I think, how can we do it efficiently, and how can we do it, strategically? And then, really a big focus is, how are we expanding the key accounts that we're working with? So these key customers who are seeing a lot of value, who we're able to support. We've been able to do that, and I've been sending out proposals now and agreements now for some pretty large expansions. How do we replicate that? How do we create consistency and scale within that too? So it's an exciting time to be, because there's a lot of the foundation, both in the product and operations and sales, to get to this point. Now we're at this point, it's like, okay, this is our next level up that we need to do as a business and team.
Sounds great. So, I mean, best of luck to you as you continue to move forward and grow. Sounds like you're on the right path, so it's exciting, like you said. So last question, what's the best way for people to contact you if they want to work with you or discuss a referral partnership? How can folks track you down?
Yeah, for sure. So the company is Tailos, TAILOS.com. So you could just go on our website and reach out there. From a sales standpoint, we have sales@tailos.com. General, it's like info@tailos.com. And then I'm Micah Green, Micah Estes Green on LinkedIn. I have a Daft Punk helmet on in my photo, so people can feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn as well and reach out that way.
Awesome. Sounds great. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I've really enjoyed our conversation and hearing about your business and kind of where you're headed in the future.
Yeah, thanks so much, Marisa. It was a fun conversation.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Leader's Edge Hot Take Series. I hope you found today's insight meaningful, valuable, and that you're ready to put them into action. Now, if you enjoyed the episode and want to keep improving your leaderships, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. I post new content every week, packed with strategies, tips, and real-life examples to help you lead with impact. And remember, great leadership isn't just about guiding others, it's about continuously growing yourself. If you'd like to be considered as a guest for upcoming episodes, please go to 5eaglesleadership.com/interview to apply today. Keep pushing, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next episode. Be awesome.